Well, historically, when books are banned, it's because a group in power, all right, feels that they need to have absolute control over a given situation or a group of people, and the way they feel like they can do that is by the dissemination of information, right? And if you control the information, you control what people believe. So essentially, by banning books, what you are doing is you're eliminating those ideas that maybe that organization doesn't abide by.
Books are banned mostly because of explicit content.
I think that books have subject matter that people sometimes find objectionable, and so they want to prevent them from being published, or they want to prevent people having access to them.
Most of the time it has to do with some pretty conservative people that have the power to do it. Generally, that's the way a lot of things go. If some people that have the power to do something decide that they want it done that way, then that's normally what transpires. So, like our board members and things like that, if they don't agree with something or a message that they interpret from a book, then normally that's what causes it to get banned.
I would say books are caused to be banned because of content that's inappropriate for some children. Kind of like we ban books or ban movies, and put certain ratings or whatever on them. I imagine it works kind of the same way, like parental guidance, if you will.
Yes, mostly because to keep it away from minors.
I think it depends. I think you have to consider the age group of the audience, because I think parents should probably have the ultimate say in what their children are exposed to. However, I don't think that a public library should really ever ban a book, because I'm thinking that parents should have the ultimate say in whether their child is exposed to certain content. And so I think parents should have that right when they go into a library to allow their child to have access or not. Having said that, as a school librarian, I find that most of the time when students come to the library, they're not with their parents. And so I feel that there's a little bit more of a responsibility on me to be somewhat protective, although I have an older age group. So if I were doing elementary school, I might be more conservative in my choices, but because I have high school, I'm far more liberal in what I choose to put on the shelf and what I don't. But I am a little bit more careful than I would be if I were a public librarian.
I think there is some good reasons to ban a book. I think you definitely have to look at the maturity level of the audience that the book is intended for. I think like if you wanted some dystopic, sex-driven books, like I wouldn't want my fourth grade daughter, when my daughter's in fourth grade, I wouldn't want her reading that book. But for like a senior in high school, I think that could possibly be appropriate, given the age level of the audience. So
You're asking me, and I love books. I think that all books are written for a reason. I think there are some books that are more appropriate for certain ages than other books, but banned outright and completely, probably not. No, there's not a good reason, because, freedom of speech and all that, right?
Well, it kind of depends. If the intention of banning books is to keep students from reading material that maybe parents or administrators don't want them to read, by banning them, they probably make them more interested in wanting to read the books. I think it actually has the opposite effect. And typically, when students read those books, I think they find the reasons that they were banned were probably not genuine reasons in and of themselves. So I don't think it really accomplishes much.
Yes, because most of the stuff would make them cringe in some ways.
I don't know that it benefits students, but I think that there are certain topics that books cover that as a parent, I would want a chance to just have a dialogue with my child about that particular topic, and so I would hope that the librarians at her school would be sensitive to that, and so, and her teachers too, for that matter, and give me the opportunity to at least be a part of that process when those books are being chosen. Not that, again, I don't think that she should completely deny access, but that there should be open dialogue when you're talking about minors. I'm not talking about just the general population in the community. I'm talking about young people and what they're exposed to or what they're not exposed to. I think there needs to be some open dialogue about that.
You know, I guess the benefit would have to align with the answer to the last question, as far as there is some level of protection from them as far as whether or not they're mature enough to handle the content. But again, I think as the older the students get, the stickier that idea gets about us making decisions for students as they start moving into adulthood and becoming consensus voting adults. I think us making decisions for them is just a little out of whack. So
again, it goes back to content. There are some things that students don't need to read about yet just because of maturity levels. But as far as banning them outright, I think sometimes it encourages the students to go after them. If it's like walking up and telling them, you can't read this, but here it is, haha, like, that's not a good idea.
It seems like that's we're creating more of the same problem, right? And if you're going to have a multitude of different ideas, whether they come from students, teachers, or parents, the idea of banning books means that we're going to stifle the free flow of ideas, which I think ultimately is not a good idea. So while I understand the context of your question, I would still disagree with the overall assumption.
Yes. As long as it's a group of people, seeing if it offends them a lot or a little.
Well, yeah, everybody should have a say. Yeah, I mean, you can't just have one group. If you're going to restrict access at all, I wouldn't be for an out-and-out ban completely, because I don't believe in denying people access to information. But if you're going to do some restrictions, if there's going to be strings attached for access to information, I think students should definitely be a part of that process.
Absolutely, because again, I think the older the students get, the more of a voice they should have. So.
Sure. It's because it's almost like having students set their own rules, and a lot of times students won't set their own rules because they don't like to be bound. But if students are mature enough, then yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on exactly what they're banning them for or what the content is.
Yeah, I don't think there are any.
Positive is, again, keeping it away from minors. And negative is keeping some content that would be important to the story.
I think positive is probably on the small side as opposed to negative. Positive, I think that, again, if you're talking children or young people, you need to take that young person, individual young person, into consideration. What it is that you're exposing, what's the book about, and are they of a frame of mind? Are they mature enough to handle it? Would they be traumatized by it? I think you have to consider that. So, yeah, the advantage is if you ban it, you're protecting. On the negative side, I think you walk that razor's edge to having one person or one group of people decide what's acceptable and what's not, and that scares me. I wouldn't want there to be one group of people saying, okay, you can only have access to this information, you can't have access to that information. That scares me. So it's like making a deal with the devil a little bit when you're talking about banning books, I think.
I think some positive effects, like an example, there are some radio stations that are more delicate with the language that's used in the morning. So as a parent with a 4-year-old son that rides in my car with me in the morning, I appreciate that you know, they're not dropping the F-bomb and cussing all over the place, so that I don't have to have that conversation with him quite yet. So I definitely think that's one very positive form of censorship. And again, also like on TV, you know, I don't have to worry about flipping on a television station and watching Disney with my kids and seeing, you know, crazy stuff on there too. So, but I do think over the years, the censorship has gotten more and more relaxed, if you will. They're allowing more and more on TV and radio.
You can protect people. You can protect certain students from things they don't need to know about yet, or from things they don't necessarily need to be exposed to over and over and over again, kind of like violence in video games and all that. There is research that shows that's eventually harmful. So I think if you keep exposing students to like promiscuous books, they're more likely to be promiscuous themselves.
What books do I know that are banned? Quite frankly, I know we have a ban list of books in this district, but I don't know what's on there specifically. I wouldn't care, because either way it should be, no book should ever be banned.
Banned? Really don't know any, really.
The only two that I've had a discussion with about recently that come off the top of my head is the 1984 and Fahrenheit 451. Those are the only two that I'm aware of. I know the kids are going around right now with some forms to fill out and get signed. But those are the only two that I've seen. And to be honest with you, other than that, I don't. I'm not in that loop. So I don't know.
I know that Huck Finn is banned in several school districts because of the use of the N-word. I know that probably several of the Beatnik books, the Beatnik writers' books, are banned for content that is questionable in nature, drugs and sex and all that jazz. But I don't know, I haven't studied up on that yet. Thank you.